Okay. Check 1, 2. Check, check, check. Is this the monitor I'm hearing? Let's make sure. Okay, I'm not monitoring. Oh, that's gotta go away. That's gotta go away. This comes to the front. Alright, thank you for joining me again tonight on another stream of Dracula. Last time we read up through chapter 3, some excerpts of Jonathan Harker's journal. Today we're beginning again, chapter 4. Jonathan Harker's journal continued. I awoke in my own bed. If it be that I had not dreamt, the Count must have carried me here. I tried to satisfy myself on the subject, but could not survive such an unquestionable result. To be sure, there were certain small evidences, such as that my clothes were folded and laid by in a manner in which was not my habit. My watch was still unwound, and I am rigorously accustomed to wind it the last thing before going to bed, and many such details. But these things are no proof, for they may have been evidences that my mind was not as usual, and for some cause or another I had certainly been much upset. I must watch for proof. If one thing, I am glad. If it was that the Count carried me here and undressed me, he must have been hurried in his task, for my pockets are intact. I am sure this diary would have been a mystery to him which he would not have brooked. He would have taken it or destroyed it. As I look around this room, although it has been to me so full of fear, it is now a sort of sanctuary, for nothing can be more dreadful than those awful women who are waiting to suck my blood. 18th May. I have been down to look at that room again in daylight, for I must know the truth. When I got to the doorway at the top of the stairs, I found it closed. It had been so forcefully driven against the jamb that part of the woodwork was splintered. I could see that the bolt of the lock had not been shot, but the door is fastened from the inside. I fear it was no dream and must act on this surmise. 19th May. I am surely in the toils. Last night the Count asked me in the suavest of tones to write 3 letters, one saying that my work here was nearly done, that I should start for home within a few days, another that I was starting on the next morning from the time of the letter, and the third that I had left the castle and arrived at Bistritz. I would fain have rebelled, but felt that in the present state of things it would be madness to quarrel openly with the Count, whilst I am so absolutely in his power, and to refuse would be to excite his suspicion and to arouse his anger. He knows that I know too much, and that I must not live, lest I be dangerous to him. My only chance is to prolong my opportunities. Something may occur which will give me a chance to escape. I saw in his eyes something of that gathering wrath which was manifest when he hurled that fair woman from him. He explained to me that posts were few and uncertain, and that my writing would ensure ease of mind to my friends. And he assured me with so much impressiveness that he would countermand the latter letters, which would be held over at Bistritz until due time in case chance would admit of my prolonging my stay. That to oppose him would have been to create new suspicion. I therefore pretended to fall in with his views and asked him what dates I should put on the letters. He calculated a minute, and then, the first should be June 12th, the second June 19th, and the third June 29. I know now the span of my life. God help me. 28th May. There is a chance of escape, or at any rate of being able to send word home. A band of Scani have come to the castle and are encamped in the courtyard. These are gypsies. I have noted them in my book. They are peculiar to this part of the world, though allied to the original gypsies all the world over. There are thousands of them in Hungary and Transylvania, who are almost outside all law. They attach themselves as a rule to some great noble or boyar and call themselves by his name. They are fearless and without religion, save superstition, and they talk only their own varieties of the Romany tongue. I shall write some letters home and shall try to get them to have them posted. I've already spoken to them through my window to begin acquaintanceship. They took their hats off and made obeisance and many signs which, however, I could not understand any more than I could their spoken language. I have written the letters. Mina's is in shorthand, and I simply asked Mr. Hawkins to communicate with her. To her I have explained my situation, but without the horrors which I may only surmise. It would shock and frighten her to death were I expose my heart to her. Should the letters not carry, then the Count shall not yet know my secret or the extent of my knowledge. I have given the letters. I threw them through the bars of my window with a gold piece and made what signs I could to have them posted. The man who took them pressed them to his heart and bowed, and then put them in his cap. I could do no more. I stole back to the study and began to read. As the Count did not come in, I have written here. The Count has come. He sat down beside me and said in his smoothest voice as he opened two letters, "The Scani has given me these, of which, though I know not whence they came, I shall, of course, take care. See?" He must have looked at it. "One is from you, and to my friend Peter Hawkins. The other—" Here he caught sight of the strange symbols as he opened the envelope, and the dark look came into his eyes, and his face blazed wickedly. "The other is a vile thing, an outrage upon friendship and hospitality. It is not signed. Well, so it cannot matter to us." And he calmly held the letter and an envelope in the flame of the lamp until they were consumed. Then he went on. "The letters to Hawkins that I shall, of course, send on, since it is yours. Your letters are sacred to me. Your pardon, my friend, that unknowingly I did break the seal. Will you not cover it over again?" He held out the letter to me with a courteous bow, handed me a clean envelope. I could only redirect it and hand it to him in silence. When he went out of the room, I could hear the key turn softly. A minute later I went over and tried it, and the door was locked. When, an hour or two after, the Count came quietly into the room, his coming awakened me, for I had gone to sleep on the sofa. He was very courteous and very cheerful in his manner, and seeing that I had been sleeping, he said, "So, my friend, you are tired. Go to bed. There's the surest rest. I may not have the pleasure of talk tonight, since there are many labors to me, but you will sleep, I pray." I passed to my room and went to bed, and, strange to say, slept without dreaming. Despair has become its own calm. 31st May. This morning when I woke, I thought I would provide myself with some papers and envelopes from my bag and keep them in my pocket, so that I might write in case I should get an opportunity, but again a surprise, again a shock. Every scrap of paper was gone, and with it all my notes, my memoranda relating to railways and travel, my letter of credit, in fact, all that might be useful to me were I once outside the castle. I sat and pondered a while, and then some thought occurred to me. I made search of my portmanteau and in the wardrobe where I had placed my clothes. The suit in which I had traveled was gone, and also my overcoat and rug. I could find no trace of them anywhere. This looked like some new scheme of villainy. 17th June. This morning, as I was sitting on the edge of my bed cudgeling my brains, I heard, without a crackling of whips and pounding and scraping of horses' feet up the rocky path beyond the courtyard. With joy, I hurried to the window and saw drive into the yard 2 great leader wagons, each drawn by 8 sturdy horses, and at the head of each pair a Slovak with his wide hat, great nail-studded belt, dirty sheepskin, and high boots. They had also their long staves in hand. I ran to the door, intending to descend and try to join them through the main hall, as I thought that way might be opened for them. Again, a shock. My door was fastened on the outside. When I ran to the window and cried to them, they looked up at me stupidly and pointed. But just then, the hetman of the Scani came out, and seeing them pointing to my window, said something at which they laughed. Henceforth, no effort of mine, no piteous cry or agonized entreaty would make them even look at me. They resolutely turned away. The leader wagons contained great square boxes with handles of thick rope. These were evidently empty. by the case with which the Slovaks handled them, and by their residents as they were roughly moved. When they were all unloaded and packed in a great heap in one corner of the yard, the Slovaks were given some money by the Scani, and, spitting on it for luck, lazily went each to their horse's head. Shortly afterwards, I heard the cracking of their whips die away in the distance. 24th June. Last night the Count left me early and locked himself into his own room. As soon as I dared, I ran up to the winding stair and looked out of the window, which opened south. I thought I would watch for the Count, for there is something going on. The Scani are quartered somewhere in the castle and are doing work of some kind. I know it, for now and then I hear a faraway muffled sound as of mattock and spade, and whatever it is, it must be the end of some ruthless villainy. I had been in the window some time, less than half an hour, when I saw something coming out of the Count's window. I drew back and watched carefully, and saw the whole man emerge. It was a new shock to me to find that he had on a suit of clothes which I had worn whilst traveling here, and slung over his shoulder the terrible bag which I had seen the women take away. There could be no doubt as to his quest, and in my garb too. This, then, is his new scheme of evil, that he will allow others to see me, as they think, so that he may leave both evidence that I have been in towns and villages posting my own letters, and that any wickedness which he may do shall by the local people be attributed to me. It makes me rage to think that this can go on, and whilst I am shut up here, a veritable prisoner, but without that protection of the law which is even a criminal's right and consolation. I thought I would watch for the Count's return, and for a long time sat doggedly at the window. Then I began to notice that there were some quaint little specks floating in the rays of the moonlight. They were like the tiniest grains of dust, and they whirled around and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. Oh, I just realized that my title's off. Okay. Chapters 4 plus. Okay, there we go. Done. Okay. Whirled around and gathered in clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them with a sense of soothing, and a sort of calm stole over me. I leaned back in the embrasure in a more comfortable position so that I could enjoy more fully the aerial gambling. Something made me start up, a low, piteous howling of dogs somewhere far below in the valley, which was hidden from my sight. Louder it seemed to ring in my ears, and the floating motes of dust take new shapes to the sound as they danced in the moonlight. I felt myself struggling to awake to some call of my instincts. Nay, my very soul was struggling, and my half-remembered sensibilities were striving to answer the call. I was becoming hypnotized. Quicker and quicker danced the dust. The moonbeams seemed to quiver as they went by me into the mass of gloom beyond. More and more they gathered, till they seemed to take some dim phantom shapes. And then I started broad awake and in full possession of my senses, and ran screaming from the place. The phantom shapes, which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams, were those three ghostly women to whom I was doomed. I fled and felt somewhat safer in my own room, where there was no moonlight and where the lamp was burning brightly. When a couple of hours had passed, I heard something stirring in the Count's room, something like a sharp wail quickly suppressed, and then there was silence, deep, awful silence, which chilled me. With a beating heart, I tried the door, but I was locked in my prison and could do nothing. I sat down and simply cried. As I sat, I heard a sound. Oh yeah, thanks for dropping it in Twitch. I forgot. As I sat here, a sound in the courtyard without, the agonized cry of a woman. I rushed to the window and, throwing it up, peered between the bars. There, indeed, was a woman with disheveled hair, holding her hands over her heart as one distressed with running. She was leaning against the corner of the gateway. When she saw my face at the window, she threw herself forward and shouted in a voice laden with menace, "Monster, give me my child." She threw herself on her knees and, raising up her hands, cried the same words in tones which wrung my heart. Then she tore her hair and beat her breast and abandoned herself to all the violences of extravagant emotion. Finally, she threw herself forward, and though I could not see her, I could hear the beating of her naked hands against the door. Somewhere high overhead, probably on the tower, I heard the voice of the Count calling in his harsh, metallic whisper. His call seemed to be answered from far and wide by the howling of wolves. Before many minutes had passed, a pack of them poured like a pent-up dam when liberated through the wide entrance into the courtyard. There was no cry from the woman, and the howling of the wolves was but short. Before long they streamed away, singly licking their lips. I could not pity her, for I knew now what had become of her child, and she was better dead. What shall I do? What can I do? How can I escape from this dreadful thing of night, gloom, and fear? 25th June. No man knows till he has suffered from the night how sweet and dear to his heart and eye the morning can be. When the sun grew so high this morning that it struck the top of the great gateway opposite my window, the high spot which it touched seemed to me as if the dove from the ark had lighted there. My fear fell from me as if it had been a vaporous garment which dissolved in the warmth. I must take action of some sort whilst the courage of the day is upon me. Last night, one of my post-dated letters went to post, and the first of that fateful series, which is to blot out the very traces of my existence from this earth. Let me not think of it. Action! It has always been at night time that I have been molested or threatened, or in some way in danger or in fear. I have not yet seen the Count in daylight. Can it be that he sleeps when others wake? That he may be awake whilst they sleep? If I could not only get into his room, but there is no possible way. The door is always locked, no way for me. Yes, there is a way, if one dares to take it. Where his body has gone, why may not another body go? I have seen him myself crawl from his window. Why should I not imitate him and go by his window? The chances are desperate, but my need is more desperate still. I shall risk it. At the worst, it can only be death, and a man's death is not a calf's, and the dreaded hereafter may still be open to me. God help me in my task. Goodbye, Mina, if I fail. Goodbye, my faithful friend and second father. Goodbye, all, and last of all, Mina. Same day, later. I have made the effort, and God helping me, have come safely back to this room. I must put down every detail in order. I went whilst my courage was fresh, straight to the window on the south side, and at once got outside on this side. The stones are big and roughly cut, and the mortar has by process of time been washed away between them. I took off my boots and ventured out on the desperate way. I looked down once so as to make sure that a sudden glimpse of the awful depth would not overcome me, but after that kept my eyes away from it. I know pretty well the direction and distance of the Count's window, and made for it as well as I could, having regard to the opportunities available below. I did not feel dizzy. I suppose I was too excited, and the time seemed ridiculously short till I found myself standing on the windowsill and trying to raise up the sash. I was filled with agitation, however, when I bent down and slid feet foremost through the window. I looked around for the Count, but with surprise and gladness made a discovery. The room was empty. It was barely furnished with odd things which seemed to have never been used. The furniture was something the same style as that in the south rooms and was covered with dust. I looked for the key, but it was not in the lock, and I could not find it anywhere. The only thing I found was a great heap of gold in one corner, gold of all kinds, Roman and British and Austrian, Hungarian, Greek and Turkish money, filled with a film of dust as though it had lain long in the ground. None of it that I noticed was less than 300 years old. There were also chains and ornaments, some jeweled, but all of them old and stained. At one corner of the room was a heavy door. I tried it, for since I could not find the key of the room or the key for the other door, which was the main object of my search, I must make further examinations, or all my efforts would be in vain. It was open, and led through a stone passage to a circular stairway which went steeply down. I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy masonry. At the bottom was a dark, tunnel-like passage, through which came a deathly, sickly odor, the odor of old earth newly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier. At last, I pulled open a heavy door which stood ajar, and found myself in an old ruined chapel, which had evidently been used as a graveyard. The roof was broken, and in two places were steps leading to vaults, but the ground was recently been dug over, and the earth placed in great wooden boxes, manifestly those which had been brought by the Slovaks. There was nobody about, and I made a search of every inch of the ground so as not to lose a chance. I went down even into the vaults where the dim light struggled, although to do so was a dread to my very soul. Into two of these I went, but saw nothing except fragments of old coffins and piles of dust. In the third, however, I made a discovery. There is one of the great boxes, of which there were 50 in all. On a pile of newly dug earth lay the Count. He was either dead or asleep, I could not say which, for eyes were open and stony, but without the glassiness of death, and the cheeks had the warmth of life, through all of their pallor. The lips were as red as ever, but there was no sign of movement, no pulse, no breath, no beating of the heart. I bent over him, trying to find any sign of life, but in vain. He could not have lain there long, for the earthy smell would have passed away in a few hours. By the side of the box was its cover, pierced with holes here and there. I thought he might have the keys on him, but I went to search, and I saw the dead eyes, and in them, dead though they were, such a look of hate, though unconscious of me or my presence, that I fled from the place, and leaving the Count's room by the window, crawled up against the castle wall. Regaining my room, I threw myself panting upon the bed and tried to think. 29th June. Today is the date of my last letter, and the Count has taken steps to prove that it was genuine. For again, I saw him leave the castle by the same window and in my clothes, and as he went down the wall, lizard fashion, I wished I had a gun or some lethal weapon that I might destroy him, but I fear that no weapon wrought by all man's hand would have any effect on him. I dared not wait to see him return, for I feared to see those weird sisters. I came back to the library and read there till I fell asleep. I was awakened by the Count, who looked at me as grimly as a man could look as he said, "Tomorrow, my friend, we must part. You return to your beautiful England, and I to some work which may have such an end that we may never meet. Your letter home has been dispatched. Tomorrow I shall not be here, but all shall be ready for your journey. In the morning come the Scani, and who have given some labors of their own here. Also come some Slovaks. When they have gone, my carriage shall come for you, and shall bear you to the Borgo Pass to meet the diligence from Bukovina to Bistritz. But I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula." I suspected him, and determined to test his sincerity. Sincerity. It seems like a profanation of the word to write it in connection with such a monster, so I asked him point blank, "Why may I not go tonight?" "Because, dear sir, my coachman and horses are away on a mission." "But I would walk with pleasure. I want to get away at once." He smiled, such a soft, smooth, diabolical smile that I knew there was some trick behind his smoothness. He said, "And your baggage?" "I do not care about it. I can send for it some other time." The Count stood up and said with a sweet courtesy which made me rub my eyes, it seemed so real, "You English have a saying which is close to my heart, for its spirit is that which rules our boyars. Welcome the coming, speed the parting guest. Come with me, my dear young friend. Not an hour shall you wait in my house against your will, though sad I am at your going, that you so suddenly desire it. Come." With a stately gravity, he and the lamp preceded me down the stairs and along the hall. Suddenly he stopped. "Hark!" Close at hand came the howling of many wolves. It was almost as if the sound sprang up at the rising of his hand, just as the music of a great orchestra seems to leap at the baton of the conductor. After a pause of a moment, he proceeded, in his stately way to the door, drew back the ponderous bolts, unhooked the heavy chains, and began to draw it open. To my intense astonishment, I saw that it was unlocked. Suspiciously, I looked all round and could see no key of any kind. As the door began to open, the howling of the wolves without grew louder and angrier, their red jaws with champing teeth and their blunt clawed feet as they leaped came in through the opening door. I knew that to struggle at this moment against the Count was useless. With such allies as these as his command, I could do nothing. But still the door continued to slowly open, and only the Count's body stood in the gap. Suddenly, it struck me that this might be the moment and the means of my doom. I was to be given to the wolves, and at my own instigation. There was a diabolical wickedness in the idea great enough for the Count, and as the last chance I cried out, "Shut the door! I shall wait till morning." And I covered my face with my hands to hide my tears of bitter disappointment. With one sweep of his powerful arm, the Count threw the door shut, and the great bolts clanged and echoed through the hall as they shot back into their places. In silence, we returned to the library, and after a minute or two, I went to my own room. The last I saw of Count Dracula was his kissing his hand to me. With a red light of triumph in his eyes and a smile that Judas in hell might be proud of, when I was in my room and about to lie down, I thought I heard a whispering at my door. I went to it softly and listened. Unless my ears deceived me, I heard the voice of the Count. Back to your own place. Your time is not yet come. Wait, have patience. Tonight is mine. Tomorrow night is yours. There was a low, sweet ripple of laughter, and in a rage I threw open the door and saw without the terrible women licking their lips. As I appeared, they all joined in a horrible laugh and ran away. I came back to my room and threw myself on my knees. It is then so near the end. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. Lord help me and those who I am dear. 30th June. These may be the last words I ever write in this diary. I slept till just before the dawn, and when I woke, threw myself on my knees, for I determined that if death came, he should find me ready. At last I felt that subtle change in the air, and knew that the morning had come. And then came the welcome cockcrow, and I felt that I was safe. With a glad heart, I opened the door and ran down the hall. I had seen that the door was unlocked, and now escape was before me. With hands that trembled with eagerness, I unhooked the chains and threw back the massive bolts, but the door would not move. Despair seized me. I pulled and pulled at the door and shook it till, massive as it was, it rattled in its casement. I could see the bolt shot. It had been locked after I left the Count. Then a wild desire took me to obtain the key at any risk, and I determined then and there to scale the wall again and gain the Count's room. He might kill me, but death now seemed the happier choice of evils. Without a pause, I rushed up to the east window and scrambled down the wall as before, into the Count's room. It was empty, but that was as I expected. I could not see a key anywhere, but the heap of gold remained. I went through the door in the corner, down the winding stair, along the dark passage to the old chapel. I knew now well enough where to find the monster I sought. The great box was in the same place, close against the wall, but the lid was laid on it, not fastened down, but with the nails ready in their places to be hammered home. I knew I must reach the body for the key, so I raised the lid and laid it back against the wall. And then I saw something which filled my very soul with horror. There lay the Count, but looking as if his youth had been half restored, for the white hair and mustache had changed to dark iron gray. The cheeks were fuller, and the white skin seemed ruby red underneath. The mouth was redder than ever, for on the lips were gouts of fresh blood, which trickled from the corners of the mouth and ran down over the chin and neck. Even the deep, burning eyes seemed set almost amongst swollen flesh, for the lids and pouches underneath were bloated. It seemed as if the whole awful creature was simply gorged with blood. He lay like a filthy leech, exhausted with his repletion. I shuddered as I bent over to touch him, and every sense in me revolted at the contact, but I had to search, or I was lost. The coming night might see my own body a banquet in a similar way to those horrid three. I felt all over the body, but no sign could I find of the key. Then I stopped and looked at the Count. There was a mocking smile on the bloated face which seemed to drive me mad. This was the being I was helping to transfer to London, where perhaps for centuries to come he might, amongst its teeming millions, satiate his lust for blood and create a new and ever-widening circle of semi-demons to batten on the helpless. The very thought drove me mad. A terrible desire came upon me to rid the world of such a monster. There was no lethal weapon at hand, but I seized a shovel which the workmen had been using to fill the cases, and lifting it high, struck with the edge downward at the hateful face. But as I did so, the head turned and the eyes fell upon me. With all their blaze of basilisk horror, the sight seemed to paralyze me, and the shovel turned in my hand and glanced from the face, merely making a deep gash above the forehead. The shovel fell from my hand across the box, and as I pulled it away, the flange of the blade caught the edge of the lid, which fell over again and hid the horrid thing from my sight. The last glimpse I had was of the bloated face, blood-stained and fixed with a grin of malice which would have held its own in the nethermost hell. I thought and thought what should be my next move, but my brain seemed on fire, and I waited with a despairing feeling growing over me. As I waited, I heard in the distance a gypsy song sung by merry voices coming closer, and through their song the rolling of... Hi, Debbie. As I heard in the distance a gypsy song sung by merry voices coming closer, and through their song the rolling of heavy wheels and the cracking of whips, the Scani and the Slovaks, of whom the Count had spoken, were coming. With a last look around at the box which contained the vile body, I ran from the place and gained the Count's room, determined to rush out at the moment the doors should be open. With strained ears, I listened and heard downstairs the grinding of the key in the great lock, and falling back of the heavy door. There must have been some other means of entry, or someone had a key for one of the locked doors. Then there came the sound of many feet tramping and dying away in some passage which sent up a clanging echo. I turned to run down again towards the vault, where I might find the new entrance, but at the moment there seemed to come a violent puff of wind, and the door to the winding stair blew to with a shock that sent the dust from the lintels flying. When I ran to push it open, I found that it was hopelessly fast. I was again a prisoner, and the net of doom was closing around me more closely. As I write, there is in the passage below a sound of many tramping feet and the crash of weights being sent down heavily, doubtless the boxes, with their freight of earth. There was a sound of hammering. It is the box being nailed down. Now I can hear the heavy feet tramping again along the hall, with many other idle feet coming behind them. The door is shut. The chains rattle. There is a grinding of the key in the lock. I can hear the key withdrawn. Then another door opens and shuts. I hear the creaking of lock and bolt. Hark, in the courtyard and down the rocky way, the roll of heavy wheels, the crack of whips, and the chorus of the Scani as they pass into the distance. I am alone in the castle with those terrible women. Pho! Mina is a woman, and there is no naught in common. They are devils of the pit. I shall not remain alone with them. I shall try to scale the castle wall farther than I have yet attempted. I shall take some of the gold with me, lest I want it later. I may find a way from this dreadful place. And then away from home, away from the quickest and nearest train, away from the cursed spot, from this cursed land where the devil and his children still walk with earthly feet. At least God's mercy is better than that of these monsters, and the precipice is high and high, At its foot a man may sleep as a man. Goodbye all, Mina. Chapter 5. Letter from Miss Mina Murray to Miss Lucy Westenra. 9th May. My dearest Lucy, forgive my long delay in writing, but I have been simply overwhelmed with work. The life of an assistant schoolmistress is sometimes trying. I am longing to be with you and by the sea, where we can talk together freely and build our castles in the air. I've been working very hard lately, because I want to keep up with Jonathan's studies, and I have been practicing shorthand very assiduously. When we are married, I shall be able to be useful to Jonathan, and if I can stenograph well enough, I can take down what he wants to say in this way and write it out for him on the typewriter, at which also I am practicing very hard. He and I sometimes write letters in shorthand, and he is keeping a stenographic journal of his travels abroad. When I am with you, I shall keep a diary in the same way. I don't mean one of those 2 pages of the week with Sunday squeezed in a corner diaries, but a sort of journal which I can write in whenever I feel inclined. I do not suppose there will be much of interest to other people, but it is not intended for them. I may show it to Jonathan some day if there is anything worth sharing, but it is really an exercise book. I shall try to do what I see lady journalists do, interviewing and writing descriptions and trying to remember conversations. I am told that, with a little practice, one can remember all that goes on, or that one hears said during a day. However, we shall see. I will tell you of my little plans when we meet. I have just had a few hurried lines from Jonathan from Transylvania. He is well, and will be returning in about a week. I am longing to hear all his news. It must be nice to see strange countries. I wonder if Jonathan and I, shall ever see them together. There's the 10 o'clock bell ringing. Goodbye, your loving Mina. Tell me all the news when you write. You have not told me anything for a long time. I heard rumors, and especially of a tall, handsome, curly-haired man. Letter, Lucy Westenra to Mina Murray. 17 Chatham Street, Wednesday. My dearest Mina, I must say you taxed me very unfairly with being a bad correspondent. I wrote you twice since we parted, and your last letter was only your second. Besides, I have nothing to tell you. There's really nothing to interest you. Town is very pleasant just now, and we do a great deal of picture galleries for walks and rides in the park. As to the tall, curly-haired man, I suppose it was one who was with me at the last pop. Someone has evidently been telling tales. That was Mr. Holmwood. He often comes to see us, and he and Mamma get on very well together. They have so many things to talk about in common. We met some time ago, a man that would just do for you if you were not already engaged to Jonathan. He's an excellent party, being handsome, well off, and of good birth. He is a doctor, and really clever. Just fancy. He's only 9 and 20, and he has an immense lunatic asylum all under his own care. Mr. Holmwood introduced him to me, and he called here to see us, and often comes now. I think he's one of the most resolute men I ever saw, and yet the most calm. He seems absolutely imperturbable. I can fancy what a wonderful power he must have over his patients. He has a curious habit of looking one straight in the face, as if he's trying to read one's thoughts. He tries this on very, very much with me, but I flatter myself he's got a tough nut to crack. I know that from my glass. Do you ever try to read your own face? I do, and I can tell you it's not a bad study. It gives you more trouble than you can well fancy if you have never tried it. He says that I afford him a curious psychological study, and I humbly think I do. I do not, as you know, take sufficient interest in dress to be able to describe the new fashions. Dress is a bore. That is slang again, but never mind. Arthur says that every day. There, it's all out, Amina. We have told all our secrets to each other since we were children. We have slept together and eaten together, laughed and cried together, and now, though I have spoken, I would like to speak more. Oh, Mina, couldn't you guess? I love him. I'm blushing as I write, for although I think he loves me, he's not told me so in words. But oh, Mina, I love him. I love him. There, that does me good. I wish I were with you, dear, sitting by the fire, undressing as we used to sit, and would try to tell you what I feel. I do not know how I'm writing this even to you. I'm afraid to stop, or I should tear up this letter. I don't want to stop, for I do so want to tell you all. Let me hear from you at once, and tell me all that you think about it. Mina, pray for my happiness. Lucy. P.S. I need not tell you this secret. I need not tell you this is a secret. Good night again. L. Letter, Lucy Westenra to Mina Murray. 24th May. My dearest Mina, thanks and thanks and thanks again for your sweet letter. It was so nice to be able to tell you and to have your sympathy. My dear, it never rains but it pours. How true the old proverbs are. Here am I, who shall be 20 in some September, and yet I've never had a proposal till today. Not a real proposal. And today I had 3. Just fancy. 3 proposals in one day. Isn't it awful? I feel sorry, really and truly sorry for 2 of the poor fellows. Oh, Mina, I'm so happy that I don't know what to do with myself. And 3 proposals, but for goodness sakes, don't tell any of the girls, or they would be getting all sorts of extravagant ideas and imagining themselves injured or slighted if in the very first day at home they did not get at least 6. Some girls are so vain. You and I, Mina dear, who are engaged and are going to settle down soon soberly into old married women, can despise vanity. Well, I must tell you about the 3. But you must keep it a secret, dear, from everyone, of course, except Jonathan. You will tell him because I would, and if I were in your place, certainly tell Arthur. A woman ought to tell her husband everything, don't you think so, dear? And I must be fair. Men like women, certainly their wives, to be quite as fair as they are. And women, I'm afraid, are not always quite as fair as they should be. Well, my dear, number 1 came just before lunch. I told you of him, Dr. John Seward, the lunatic asylum man. The one with the strong jaw and the good forehead. He was very cool outwardly, but was nervous all the time. He had evidently been schooling himself as to all sorts of little things, and remembered them, but he almost managed to sit down on his silk hat, which men don't generally do when they're cool. And that made me nearly scream. Oh, that was the wrong line. Cool. And then he wanted to appear at ease. He kept playing with the lancet in a way that made me nearly scream. He spoke to me, Mina, very straightforwardly. He told me how dear I was to him, though he had known me so little, and what his life would be with me to help and cheer him. Oh. He was going to tell me how unhappy he would be if I did not care for him, but when he saw me cry, he said he was a brute, and I would not add to my present trouble. Then he broke off and asked if I could love him in time, and when I shook my head, his hands trembled, and then with some hesitation he asked me if I cared already for anyone else. He put it very nicely, saying that he did not want to wring my confidence from me, but only to know, because if a woman's heart was free, a man might have hope. And then, Mina, I felt a sort of duty to tell him that there was someone. I only told him that much, and then he stood up and looked very strong and very grave as he took both my hands in his hand, and said he hoped I would be happy, and that if I ever wanted a friend, I must count on him, one of my best. Oh, Mina dear, I can't help crying, and you must excuse this letter being all blotted. Being proposed to is all very nice and all that sort of thing, but it isn't at all a happy thing when you have to see a poor fellow, whom you know loves you honestly, going away and looking all broken-hearted, and to know that, no matter what he say at the moment, you're passing out of his life. My dear, I must stop here at present. I feel so terrible, though I am so happy. Evening. Arthur has just gone, and I feel in better spirits than when I left off, so I can go on telling you about the day. Well, my dear, number 2 came after lunch. He's such a nice fellow, an American from Texas, and he looks so young and so fresh that it seems almost impossible that he's been to so many places and has such adventures. I sympathized with poor Desdemona when she had had such a stream poured into her ear, even by a black man. It's interesting. What the hell is that line supposed to say? Must be a reference I don't get from the time. Anyway, back to it. I suppose that we women are such cowards that we think a man will save us from fears, and when we marry him. I know now what I would do if I were a man and wanted to make a girl love me. No, I don't, for there was Mr. Morris telling us his stories, and Arthur never told any, and yet... My dear, I am somewhat previous. Mr. Quincy P. Morris found me alone. It seems that a man always does find a girl alone. No, he doesn't, for Arthur tried twice to make a chance, and I helping him all I could. I'm not ashamed to say it now. I must tell you beforehand that Mr. Morris doesn't always speak slang. That is to say, he never does so to strangers or before them. For he's really well educated and has exquisite manners, but he found out that it amused me to hear him talk American slang, and whenever I was present and there was no one to be shocked, he said such funny things. I'm afraid, my dear, he has to invent it all, for it fits exactly into whatever else he has to say. But this is a way slang has. I do not know myself if I shall ever speak slang. I do not know if Arthur likes it, as I've never heard him use any of it. Well, Mr. Morris sat down beside me and looked as happy and jolly as he could, but I could see all the same that he was very nervous. He took my hand in his, said ever so sweetly, "Miss Lucy, I know I ain't good enough to regulate the fixings of your little shoes, but I guess if you wait until I find a man that is, you'll go join them 7 young women with the lamps when you quit. Won't you just hitch up alongside me and let us go down the road together, driving in double harness?" Well, he did look so good-humored and so jolly that it didn't seem half so hard to refuse him as it did poor Dr. Seward. So I said as lightly as I could that I did not know anything of hitching and that I wasn't broken to harness at all yet. Then he said that he had spoken in a light manner, and he hoped that if he had made a mistake in doing so on so grave, so momentous an occasion for him, I would forgive him. He really did look serious when he was saying it, and I couldn't help feeling a sort of exultation that he was number 2 in one day. And then, my dear, before I could say a word, he began pouring out a perfect torrent of love-making, laying his very heart and soul at my feet. He looked so earnest over it that I shall never again think that a man must be playful always, and never earnest, because he is merry at times. I suppose he saw something in my face which checked him, for he suddenly stopped, and said with a sort of manly fervor that I could have loved him for if I had been free. "Lucy, you're an honest-hearted girl, I know. I should not be here speaking to you as I now am if I not believe you clean grit, right through to the very depths of your soul. Tell me, like one good fellow to another, is there anyone else that you care for? And if there is, I'll never trouble you a hair's breadth again, but will be, if you let me, a very faithful friend." My dear Mina, why are men so noble when women are so little worthy of them? Here was I almost making fun of this great-hearted, true gentleman. I burst into tears. I'm afraid, my dear, you will think this is a very sloppy letter in more than one way, and I felt very badly. Why can't they let a girl marry 3 men, as many as want her, and save all this trouble? But this is heresy. I must not say it. I'm glad to say that, though I was crying, I was able to look into Mr. Moore's brave eyes, and I told him straight, yes, there is someone I love, though he has not told me yet that he even loves me. I was right to speak to him so frankly, for quite a light came into his face, and he put out both his hands and took mine. I think I put them into his, and said in a hearty way, "That's my brave girl. It's better worth being late for a chance of winning you than being in time for any other girl in the world. Don't cry, my dear. If it's for me, I'm a hard nut to crack, and I take it standing up. If that other fellow doesn't know his happiness, well, he'd better look for it soon, and he'll have to deal with me. Little girl, your honesty and pluck have made me a friend, and that's rarer than a lover. It's more selfish anyhow." My dear, I'm gonna have a pretty lonely walk between this and Kingdom Come. Won't you give me one kiss? It'll be something to keep off the darkness now and then. You can, if you like, for that other good fellow, or you could not love him who hasn't spoken yet. That quite won me, Mina, for it was brave and sweet of him. And noble, too, to a rival, wasn't it? And he so sad, and he so sad, I leant over and kissed him. He stood up with my 2 hands in his as he looked down into my face. I'm afraid I was blushing very much, and he said, "Little girl, I hold your hand, and you've kissed me, and if these things don't make us friends, nothing ever will. Thank you for your sweet honesty to me, and goodbye." He wrung my hand, and taking up his hat, went straight out of the room without even looking back, without a tear or a quiver or a pause, and I'm crying like a baby. Oh, why must a man like that be made unhappy when there are lots of girls about who would worship the very ground he trod on? I know I would if I were free, if only I don't want to be free. My dear, this quite upset me, and I feel I cannot write of happiness just at once. After telling you of it, I don't wish to tell of the number 3 until I can be happy. Until it can all be happy. Ever your loving Lucy. P.S. Oh, about number 3. I needn't tell you of number 3, need I? Besides, it was all so confused. It seemed only a moment from his coming into the room till both his arms were round me and he was kissing me. I am very, very happy, and I don't know what I have done to deserve it. I must only try in the future to show that I am not ungrateful to God for all his goodness to me in sending me such a lover, such a husband, and such a friend. Goodbye. Dr. Seward's Diary, kept in phonograph. 25th May. Ebb tide and appetite today. Cannot eat, cannot rest, so diary instead. Since my rebuff of yesterday, I have a sort of empty feeling. Nothing in the world seems of sufficient importance to be worth the doing. As I knew that the only cure for this sort of thing was work, I went amongst the patients. I picked out one who has afforded me a study of much interest. He is so quaint that I am determined to understand him as well as I can. Today, I seem to get nearer than ever before to the heart of his mystery. I questioned him more fully than I had ever done, and with a view of making myself master of the facts of his hallucination. In my manner of doing it, there was, I now see, something of cruelty. I seemed to wish to keep him to the point of his madness, a thing which I avoid with the patients as I would the mouth of hell. Under what circumstances I would not avoid the pit of hell? Omnia Romae venalia sunt. Hell has its price. If there be anything behind this instinct, it will be valuable to trace it afterwards accurately, so I'd better commence to do so, therefore. R.M. Renfield, age 59. Sanguine temperament, great physical strength, morbidly excitable, periods of gloom ending in some fixed idea which I cannot make out. I presume that the sanguine temperament itself and the disturbing influence end in a mentally accomplished finish. A possibly dangerous man, probably dangerous if unselfish. In selfish men, caution is a secure armor for their foes as for themselves. What I think of on this point is, when self is the fixed point, the centripetal force is balanced with the centrifugal. When duty, a cause, etc., is the fixed point, the latter force is paramount, and only accident or a series of accidents can balance it. Letter, Quincy P. Morris to the Honorable Arthur Holmwood. 25th May. My dear Art, we've told yarns by the campfire in the prairies and dressed one another's wounds after trying a landing at the Marquesas, and drunk healths on the shores of Titicaca. There are more yarns to be told, and other wounds to be hailed, and other health to be drunk. Won't you let this be at my campfire tomorrow night? I have no hesitation in asking you, as I know a certain lady is engaged to a certain dinner party, and that you are free. There will only be one other, our old pal at the Korea, Jack Seward. He's coming too, and we both want to mingle our weeps over the wine cup, and to drink a health with all our hearts to the happiest man in all the wide world, who has won the noblest heart that God has made, and best worth winning. We promise you a hearty welcome and a loving greeting, and health as true as your own right hand. We shall both swear to leave you at home if you drink too deep to a certain pair of eyes. Come, yours as ever and always, Quincy P. Morris. Telegram from Arthur Homeward to Quincy P. Morris, 26th May. Count me in every time. I bear messages which will make both your ears tingle. Art. Chapter 6. Mina Murray's Journal. 24th July, Whitby. Lucy met me at the station, looking sweeter and lovelier than ever, and we drove up to the house at the Crescent in which they have rooms. This is a lovely place. The little river, the Esk, runs through a deep valley which broadens out as it comes near the harbor. A great viaduct runs across with high piers, through which the view seems somehow further away than it really is. The valley is beautifully green, and it is so steep that when you are on the high land on either side, you look right across it, unless you are near enough to see down. The houses of the old town, the side away from us, are all red-roofed, and seem piled up one over the other anyhow, like the pictures we see of Nuremberg. Right over the town is the ruin of Whitby Abbey, which was sacked by the Danes, and which is the scene of the part of Marmion where the girl was built up in the wall. It's a most noble ruin, of immense size, and full of beautiful and romantic bits. There's a legend that a white lady is seen in one of the windows. Between it and the town there is another church, the parish one, round which is a big graveyard all full of tombstones. This is to my mind the nicest spot in Whitby, for it lies right over the town, and has a full view of the harbor, and all up the bay to where the headland called Kettleness stretches out and into the sea. It descends so steeply over the harbor that part of the bank has fallen away, and some of the graves have been destroyed. In one place, part of the stonework of the graves stretches out over the sandy path far below. There are walks with seats behind them, through the churchyard, and people go and sit there all day long, looking at the beautiful view and enjoying the breeze. I shall come and sit here often myself and work. Indeed, I am writing now, with my book on my knee, and listening to the talk of 3 old men who are sitting beside me. They seem to do nothing all day but sit here and talk. The harbor lies below me, with, on the far side, one long granite wall stretching out into the sea, with a curve outwards at the end, in the middle of which is a lighthouse. A heavy sea wall runs along outside of it. On the near side, the sea wall makes an elbow crooked inversely, and its end, too, has a lighthouse. Between the 2 piers there is a narrow opening into the harbor, which then suddenly widens. It is nice at high water, and when the tide is out, it shoals away to nothing, and there is merely the stream of the Esk running between banks of sand with rocks here and there. Outside the harbor, on this side, there rises for about half a mile a great reef, the sharp of which runs straight out from beneath the south lighthouse. At the end of it is a buoy with a bell, which swings in bad weather and sends in a mournful sound on the wind. They have a legend here that when a ship is lost, bells are heard out at sea. I must ask the old man about this. He's coming this way. He is a funny old man. He must be awfully old, for his face is gnarled and twisted like the bark of a tree. He tells me that he's nearly 100, and that he was a sailor in the Greenland fishing fleet when Waterloo was fought. He is, I'm afraid, a very skeptical person, for when I asked him about the bells at sea and the white lady at the abbey, he said very brusquely, "I wouldn't fash mezzle." Ooh. Sorry, this is a little hard to parse. Okay. I wouldn't fash myself about them, miss. Them things be all wore out. Mind, I don't say that they never was, but I do say that they wasn't in my time. They be all very well for comers and trippers and the like, but not for a nice young lady like you. Them feet folks from York and Leeds that be always eating cured herons and drinking tea and looking out but to buy cheap jet with Creed. Ought I wonder myself, wouldn't be bothered telling lies to them, even the newspapers, which is full of fool talk. Sorry, that was very, very cockney or some kind of odd slang. I thought he'd be a good person to learn interesting things from, so I asked him if he could mind telling me something about the whale fishing in the old days. He was just settling himself to begin when the clock struck 6, whereupon he labored to get up and said, I must gang again word home now, miss. My granddaughter doesn't like me to keep waiting when the tea is ready, for it takes me time to crammel aboon the grease, for there be many of 'em, and miss, I lack belly timber sairly by the clock. God, that doesn't make any goddamn sense. He hobbled away, and I could see him hurrying as well as he could down the steps. The steps are a great feature on the place. They lead from the town to the church, and there are hundreds of them. I didn't know how many, and they wind up in a delicate curve. The slope is so gentle that a horse could easily walk up and down them. I think they must originally have been something to do with the abbey. I shall go home, too. Lucy went out, visiting with her mother, as they were only duty. And as they were only duty calls, I did not go. 1st August. I came up here an hour ago with Lucy, and we had a most interesting talk with my old friend and the two others who always come and join him. He's evidently the Sir Oracle of them, and I should think must have been, in his time, a most dictatorial person. He will not admit anything, and downfaces everybody. If he can't out-argue them, he bullies them, and then takes their silence for agreement with his views. Lucy was looking sweetly pretty in her white lawn frock. She's got a beautiful color since she's been here. I noticed that the old men did not lose any time in coming and sitting near her when she sat down. She's so sweet with old people. I think they all fell in love with her on the spot. Even my old man succumbed and did not contradict her, but gave me a double share instead. I got him on the subject of the legends, and he went off at once into a sort of sermon. I must try to remember it and put it down. It be all fool talk, lock, stock, and barrel, and that's what it be, and nowt else. These bands and wafts and ball ghosts and bar guests and bogles and all in them is only fit to see barns and dizzy women a bellerin. They not but blebs. Oh my god, okay, I'm just gonna skip all of this crazy sailor talk. I could see the old fellow's self-satisfied air in the way in which he looked around for the approval of his cronies, that he was showing off, so I put in a word to keep him going. Oh, Mr. Swales, you can't be serious. Surely these tombstones are not all wrong. Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, but there may be poorish few not wrong, savin' where they make out the people too good, for there be folk that do think a balm bowl be like the sea. If only it be their own, the thing be only lies. Now look you here. You come here a stranger, and you see this Kirkarth. What in the hell is that? Okay. I nodded, for I thought it better to assent, though I did not quite understand his dialect. I knew it had something to do with the church. He went on. And you can say that all of these steens aboon folk that be haped here snod. I assented again. Then that be just where the lie comes in. Why, there be scores of these lay beds that be tomb as old Dunn's back-a-box on Friday night. What in the hell kind of slang is this supposed to be? He nudged one of his companions, and they all laughed. And by Gog, how could they be otherwise? Look at that one, the aftest abaft and beer bank. Read it. I went over and read. Edward Spenslav, master mariner, murdered by pirates off the coast of Andre, April 1854, age 30. When I came back, Mr. Swales went on. Who brought him home? I wonder to hap him here. Murdered off the coast of Andre? And you can say that his body lay under? Why, I could name ye a dozen whose bones lie in the Greenland seas above. He pointed northwards, or where the currents may have drifted them. There be the steens around ye. Ye can, with your young eyes, read the small prints of the lies from here. This Braithwaite Lowry, I knew his father, lost in the lively of Greenland in 20, or Andrew Woodhouse, drowned in the same seas in 1777, or John Paxton, drowned off Cape Farewell a year later, or old John Rawlings, whose grandfather sailed with me, drowned in the Gulf of Finland in 50. Do you think all these men will have to make a rush to whip me when they trumpet sounds? Have me anthems about it. I tell ye that when they got there, they'd be jumblin' and jostling one another that way, and would be a fight up on the ice in the old days, when we'd be at one another from daylight to dark and trying to tie up our cuts by the Aurora Borealis. This was evidently local pleasantry, for the old man cackled over it, and his cronies joined in with gusto. But, I said, surely you're not quite correct, for you start on the assumption that all the poor people are their spirits will have to take their tombstone with them on the Day of Judgment. Do you think that'll really be necessary? Well, what else be they tombstones for? Answer me that, miss. To please their relatives, I suppose. To please their relatives, I suppose, this he said with an intense scorn. How will it pleasure their relatives to know that what lies is wrote over them, and what everybody in this place knows what they be lies? He pointed to a stone at our feet, which had been laid down as a slab, on which the seat was rested, close to the edge of the cliff. Read the lies on that through stone, he said. The letters were upside down from where I sat, but Lucy was more opposite them, so she leant over and read. Sacred to the memory of George Cannon, who died in the hope of glorious resurrection on July 29, 1873, falling from the rocks at Kettleness. This tomb was erected by his sorrowing mother to her dearly beloved son. He was the only son of his mother, and she was a widow. Really, Mr. Swales, I don't see anything very funny in that. She spoke her comment very gravely and somewhat severely. You don't see aught funny? Ha-ha, but that's because you don't gone. The sorrowing mother was a hellcat that hated him because he was awkward. Because he was a crooked, a regular limiter. He was, and he hated her so much that he committed suicide in order that she mightn't get an insurance she put on his life. He blew nigh the top of his head off with an old musket that they had for scaring crows with. 'Tweren't for crows then, for it brought the clegs and dops to him. That's the way he fell off the rocks. And as to hopes of a glorious resurrection, I've often heard him say mysel that he hoped he'd go to hell, for his mother was so pious that she'd sure to be to go to heaven, and he didn't want to addle where she was. Now isn't that steen at any rate? He hammered with his stick as he spoke. A pack of lies, and I won't it make Gabriel cackle when Geordie comes patting up to his grease with his top steen balanced on his hump and asked to be took as evidence. I did not know what to say, but Lucy turned the conversation as she said, rising up. Oh, why did you tell us this? It's my favourite seat, and I cannot leave it. Now I must find to go on sitting over the grave of a suicide. That won't harm you, me pretty, and it may make poor Geordie gladsome to have so trim a lass sitting on his lap, but that won't hurt ye. Why, I've sat here off and on for nigh 20 years past, and it hasn't done me no harm. Don't you fash about them as lies under you, or that it doesn't lie there either. It'll be a time for you to be getting scart when you see the tombstones all run away, and the place you bears as a stubble field. That's the clock, and I must gang. My service to you, ladies. And he hobbled off. God, that is so hard to read. Lucy and I sat a while, and it was all so beautiful before us that we took hands as we sat, and she told me all over again about Arthur and their coming marriage. That made me just a little heartsick, for I haven't heard from Jonathan for a whole month. The same day, I came up here alone, for I'm very sad, and there is no letter for me. I hope there cannot be anything the matter with Jonathan. The clock has struck 9. I see the lights scattered all over the town, sometimes in rows where the streets are, and sometimes singly. They ran right up the Esk and die away in the curve of the valley. To my left, the view is cut off by a black line of the roof of an old house next to the abbey. The sheep and lambs are bleating in the fields away behind me, and there is a clatter of donkeys' hoofs up the paved road below. The band on the pier is playing a harsh waltz in good time, and further along the quay there is a Salvation Army meeting in a back street. Neither of the bands hears the other, but up here I hear and see them both. I wonder where Jonathan is, if he's thinking of me. I wish he were here. Dr. Seward's Diary. 5th June. The case of Renfield grows more interesting the more I get to understand the man. He has certain qualities very largely developed: selfishness, secrecy, and purpose. I wish I could get at what is the object of the latter. He seems to have some settled scheme of his own, but what it is I do not know. His redeeming quality is a love of animals, though, indeed, he has such curious turns in it that I sometimes imagine he's only abnormally cruel. His pets are of odd sorts. Just now his hobby is catching flies. He has at present such a quantity that I have had myself to expostulate. To my astonishment, he did not break out into a fury, as I expected, but took the matter in simple seriousness. He thought for a moment and then said, "May I have 3 days? I shall clear them away." Of course, I said that would do. I must watch him. 18th June. He has turned his mind now to spiders, and has got several very big fellows in a box. He keeps feeding them as flies, and the number of the latter is becoming sensibly diminished, although he has used half of his food in attracting more flies from outside to his room. 1st July. His spiders are now becoming a great nuisance, as his flies, and today I told him that he must get rid of them. He looked very sad at this, so I said that he must some of them, at all events. He looked very sad at this, so I said that he must some of them, at all events. He cheerfully acquiesced in this, and I gave him the same time as before for reduction. He disgusted me much while with him, for when a horrid blowfly, bloated with some carrion food, buzzed into the room, he caught it, held it exultantly for a few moments between his fingers and thumb, and before I knew what he was doing, put it in his mouth and ate it. I scolded at him for it, but he argued quietly that it was very good and very wholesome, that it was life, strong life, and it gave life to him. This gave me an idea, or the rudiment of one. I must watch how he gets rid of his spiders. He has evidently some deep problem in his mind, for he keeps a little notebook in which he is always jotting down something. Whole pages are filled with masses of figures, generally single numbers added up in batches, and then the totals added in batches again, as though he was focusing some account, as the auditors put it. 8th July. There is a method in his madness, and the rudimentary idea in my mind is growing. It will be a whole idea soon, and then, oh, unconscious cerebration, you'll have to give the wall to your conscious brother. I kept away from my friend for a few days so that I might notice if there were any change. Things remain as they were, except that he has parted with some of his pets and got a new one. He's managed to get a sparrow, and has already partially tamed it. His means of taming is simple, for already the spiders have diminished. Those that do remain, however, are well fed, or he still brings in the flies by tempting them with his food. 19th July. We are progressing. My friend has a whole colony of sparrows, and his flies and spiders are almost obliterated. When I came in, he ran to me and said he wanted to ask me a great favor. A very, very great favor. And as he spoke, he fawned on me like a dog. I asked him what it was, and he said, with a sort of rapture in his voice and bearing, "A kitten, a nice little sleek, playful kitten that I can play with and teach and feed and feed and feed." I was not unprepared for this request, for I'd noticed how his pets went on increasing in size and vivacity. But I did not care that his pretty family of tame sparrows should be wiped out in the same manner as the flies and spiders. So I said I would see about it, and asked him if he would not rather have a cat than a kitten. His eagerness betrayed him as he answered, "Oh yes, I would like a cat. I only asked for a kitten unless you should refuse me a cat. No one would refuse me a kitten, would they?" I shook my head and said that at present I feared it would not be possible, but that I would see about it. His face fell, and I could see a warning of danger in it, for there was a sudden, fierce, sidelong look which meant killing. The man is an undeveloped homicidal maniac. I shall test him with his present craving and see how it will work out, and then I shall know more. 10 p.m. I have visited him again, and found him sitting in a corner brooding. When I came in, he threw himself on his knees before me and implored me to let him have a cat, that his salvation depended upon it. I was firm, however, and told him that he could not have it, whereupon he went without a word and sat down, gnawing his fingers in the corner where I had found him. I shall see him in the morning, early. 20th July. Visited Renfield very early. Before attendant went his rounds. Found him up and humming a tune. He was spreading out his sugar, which he had saved, in the window, and was manifestly beginning his fly-catching again, and beginning it cheerfully and with good grace. I looked around for his birds, and not seeing them, asked him where they were. He replied, without turning round, that they had all flown away. There were a few feathers around the room, and on his pillow a drop of blood. I said nothing, but went and told the keeper to report to me if there was anything odd about him during the day. 11 a.m. The attendant has just been to see me and say that Renfield has been very sick and has disgorged a whole lot of feathers. My belief is, doctor, he said, that he's eaten his birds and that he just took and ate them raw. 11 p.m. I gave Renfield a strong opiate tonight, enough to make him sleep, and took away his pocketbook to look at it. The thought that has been buzzing around my brain lately is complete, and the theory proved. My homicidal maniac is of a particular kind. I shall have to invent a new classification for him and call him a zoophagous, life-eating maniac. What he desires is to absorb as many lives as he can, and he has laid himself out to achieve it in a cumulative way. He gave many flies to one spider, and many spiders to one bird, and then wanted a cat to eat the many birds. What would have been his later steps? It would almost be worthwhile to complete the experiment. It might be done if there was only a sufficient cause. Men sneered at vivisection, and yet look at its results today. Why not advance science in its most difficult and vital aspects, the knowledge of the brain? Had I even the secret of one such mind? Did I hold the key to the fancy of even one lunatic? I might advance my own branch of science to a pitch compared to which Burton Sanderson's physiology or Ferrier's brain knowledge would be as nothing. If only there was a sufficient cause. I must not think too much of this, or I may be tempted. A good cause might turn the scale with me, for may not I too be an exceptional brain, congenitally? How well the man reasoned. Lunatics always do within their own scope. I wondered how many lives he values a man, or if it had only one. He has closed the account most accurately, and today began a new record. How many of us begin a new record with each day of our lives? To me, it seems only yesterday that my whole life ended with my new hope, and that truly I began a new record, so it shall be until the great recorder sums me up and closes my ledger account with a balance to profit or loss. Oh, Lucy, Lucy, I cannot be angry with you, nor can I be angry with my friend whose happiness is yours. But I must only wait on the hopeless and work. If I could have as strong a cause as my poor mad friend there, a good unselfish cause to make me work, that would be indeed happiness. Mina Murray's Journal, 26th July. I am anxious, and it soothes me to express myself here. It is like whispering to oneself and listening at the same time, and there's also something about the shorthand symbols that makes it different from writing. I'm unhappy with Lucy and about Jonathan. I had not heard from Jonathan for some time and was very concerned, but yesterday my dear Mr. Hawkins, who is always so kind, sent me a letter from him. I had written asking him if he had heard, and he said the enclosed had just been received. It is only a line dated from Castle Dracula, and says that he is just starting for home. That's not like Jonathan. I do not understand it, and it makes me uneasy. Then, too, Lucy, although she is so well, has lately taken to her old habit of walking in her sleep. Her mother has spoken to me about it, and we have decided that I am to lock the door of our room every night. Mrs. Westenra has got an idea that sleepwalkers always go out on roofs of houses and along the edges of cliffs and then get suddenly awakened and fall over with a despairing cry that goes all over the place. Poor dear, she's naturally anxious about Lucy, and she tells me that her husband, Lucy's father, had the same habit, that he would get up in the night, dress himself, and go out if he were not stopped. Lucy's to be married in the autumn, and she's already planning out her dresses and how our house is to be arranged. I sympathize with her, for I do have the same, only Jonathan and I will start in life in a very simple way and shall have to try to make both ends meet. Mr. Holmwood, he is the Honourable Arthur Holmwood, only son of Lord Godalming, is coming up here very shortly, as soon as he can leave town, for his father is not very well, and I think Lucy is counting the moments till he comes. She wants to take him up in the seat on the churchyard cliff and show him the beauty of Whitby. I dare say it is the waiting which disturbs her. She'll be all right when he arrives. 27th July. No news from Jonathan. I'm getting quite uneasy about him, though why I do not know. But I do wish that he would write, if it were only a single line. Lucy walks more than ever, and each night I'm awakened by her moving about the room. Fortunately, the weather's so hot that she cannot get cold, but still, the anxiety and the perpetually being awakened is beginning to tell on me. And I'm getting nervous and wakeful myself. Thank God, Lucy's help keeps up. Mr. Holmwood has been suddenly called to Ring to see his father, who has been taken seriously ill. Lucy frets at the postponement of seeing him, but it does not touch her looks. She is a trifle stouter, and her cheeks are a lovely rose pink. She has lost the anemic look which she had. I pray it will all last. 3rd August. Another week gone by, and no news from Jonathan, not even to Mr. Hawkins, from whom I have heard. Oh, I do hope he's not ill. He surely would have written. I look at that last letter of his, but somehow it does not satisfy me. It does not read like him, and yet it is his writing. There's no mistake of that. Lucy has not walked much in her sleep the last week, but there's an odd concentration about her, which I do not understand. Even in her sleep, she seems to be watching me. She tries the door, and finding it locked, goes about the room searching for the key. 6th August. Another 3 days, and no news. The suspense is getting dreadful. If only I knew where to write or where to go, I should feel easier. But no one has heard a word of Jonathan since that last letter. I must only pray to God for patience. Lucy is more excitable than ever, but is otherwise well. Last night was very threatening, and the fishermen say that we are in for a storm. I must try to watch and learn the weather signs. Today is a grey day, and the sun, as I write, is hidden in thick clouds, high over Kettleness. Everything is grey except the green grass, which seems like which seems like emerald amongst it. Grey, earthy rock, grey clouds, tinged with sunburst at the far edge, hang over the grey sea, into which the sand points stretch like grey figures. The sea is tumbling in over the shallows, and the sandy flats with a roar, muffled in the sea mists drifting inland. The horizon is lost in a grey mist. All vastness. The clouds are piled up like giant rocks, and there is a brool over the sea that sounds like some passage of doom. Dark figures are on the beach here and there, sometimes half shrouded in the mist, and seem men like trees walking. The fishing boats are racing for home, and rise and dip and ground and swell as they sweep into the harbour, bending to the scuppers. Here comes old Mr. Swales. He's making straight for me, and I can see, by the way he lifts his hat, that he wants to talk. I've been quite touched by the change in the poor old man. When he sat down beside me, he said in a very gentle way, "I want to say something to you, miss." I could see he was not at ease, so I took his poor old wrinkled hand in mine and asked him to speak fully. So he said, leaving his hand in mine, "I'm afraid, me dearie, that I must have shocked you all by the wicked things I've been saying about the dead, and such things for past weeks, but I didn't mean them. I want you to remember that when I'm gone, we old folks that be dabbled and with one foot above the croak hole don't altogether think of it, and we don't want to feel scart of it, and that's why I've took to making light of it, so that I'd cheer up my own heart a bit. But Lord love you, miss, I ain't afraid of dying, not a bit, only I don't want to die if I can help it. My time must be nigh at hand now, for I be odd, and 100 years is too much for any man to expect, and I'm so nigh that the odd man is already whetting his scythe. You see, I can't get out of the habit of coughing about it all at once. Shafts will wag as they used to. Some day soon the angel of death will sound his trumpet for me, but don't you doing all great, my dearie. But don't you dull and great, my dearie, for he saw that I was crying. If he should come this way this very night, I'd not refuse to answer his call, for life be, after all, only a waiting for something else than what we're doing, and death be all that we can rightly depend on. But I'm content for it coming to me, my dearie, and coming quick. It may be coming while we be looking and wondering. Maybe it's in that wind out there, the sea that's bringing with it loss and wreck, and sore distress and sad hearts. Look, look, he cried suddenly. There's something in that wind and in the host beyond that sounds and looks and tastes and smells like death. It's in the air. I feel it coming. Lord, make me answer cheerful when my call comes. He held up his arms devoutly and raised his hat. His mouth moved as though he were praying. After a few minutes' silence, he got up, shook hands with me, and blessed me, and said goodbye. And he hobbled off. It all touched me and upset me very much. I was glad when the Coast Guard came along, with his spyglass under his arm. He stopped to talk with me, as he always does, but all the time kept looking at the strange ship. "I can't make her out," he said. "She's a Russian, by the look of her, but she's knocking about in the queerest way. She doesn't know her mind a bit. She seems to see the storm coming, but can't decide whether to run up north in the open or put in here. Look, there again. She's steered mighty strangely. She doesn't mind the hand of the wheel. Changes about with every puff of the wind. We'll hear more of her before this time tomorrow." Thus concludes Chapter 6. I think I'm going to keep this about 3 chapters per reading session, just so I don't burn out my voice. I'd like to keep doing this a little more often. I've got some plans for more things down the road once we finish Dracula. I think probably about 5 more sessions for Dracula, and then I'll probably either do a series of poems or I might go straight into the picture of Dorian Gray. But thank you all for coming around. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll leave the VOD up so you can listen back to it at your own leisure. Have a great day. Oh yeah, let's go ahead and do the streamer thing and raid somebody who's on. Let's Let's see. We'll raid into... Let's go ahead and raid charcoal. Charcoal moth. Okay, I spelled that right. Hopefully this works. Let's go.